Hi everyone, Coach Tiffany here. So I was just thinking this morning about the idea, part of the reason that, extreme dieting doesn't work is this idea of like an all or nothing lifestyle. So either we're taking care of ourselves really well or we're not taking care of ourselves at all, right? And that a lot of times goes along with dieting. So if we're on a diet, then we're taking our supplements, we are maybe exercising regularly, we're going to bed earlier, we're drinking our water. And then as soon as we hit a snag, maybe we eat a bunch of pizza on a Friday night, then, we also eat all the ice cream in the house, and then we go to bed maybe without taking, if you have bedtime medications or supplements. For me, I take magnesium at night, and it helps my muscles, it helps me relax, and it's also good for regularity. Anyway, so, then we don't take our bedtime stuff. Maybe you're taking digestive enzymes and you decide, oh, I'm having pizza, so I'm not going to take the digestive enzymes, which it's when you really need digestive enzymes, right? When you're when you're eating something that your body maybe doesn't digest very well. So it's a really interesting switch that flips in our brain. So we're like, oh, well, since I'm eating the pizza, I'm not going to, take my supplements that I need. I'm not going to, we go to bed without washing our face, right? Like greasy, we just pass out in bed after eating all the pizza and the cake or whatever it is. And then, get up in the morning just feeling awful. And, a lot of times we don't drink our water, and there's just this kind of mentality of I'm getting notifications, this mentality of if I'm not on a diet, if I can't do it, if I'm not perfect, then I might as well do nothing. And a lot of times when we go off of our diets, it's because, well, A, they don't work, right? And they're just too restrictive. But a lot of times it's also because we have a lot of stress in our life. And so what I have found is that it's really important to get a base of self-care, right? So things that we do every day, regardless of what we're eating. So taking our supplements, regardless of whether we decided to eat pizza or decided to eat a salad. Because in fact, when we're eating the pizza is when we need the self-care the most, right? It's when we need to wash our face the most because we've got cheese on our face or whatever. So creating this, regardless of what's happening with food in your life, deciding to create this structure or foundation for self-care is so important. So, and I'm not talking necessarily about bubble baths. I'm talking about everything from, taking your medication to going to the doctor to, I like to think of it in terms of car maintenance, right? So all the things you'd normally do for your car, like change your oil and clean out your car, right? And just even doing, just because, we ate all the things doesn't mean that we shouldn't do our laundry, right? So why when we eat all the things do we think that we shouldn't do the other things that are nourishing for our body? I don't know. So it's still useful to meditate or go for a walk or, go to the gym, even if we're eating poorly. Does that make sense? So I have a client who has done a really good job of really establishing those basic self-care pieces and what that means for her and what that looks like. And it's interesting because we were looking at her past kind of weight fluctuations. And it turns out that, when things were really stable, it wasn't necessarily that she was eating perfectly. There were a lot of other things that she was doing, around strength training, exercise, these types of things, taking, allergy medicines, things as simple as that. So, so those are the things that I encourage my clients to start with, is to doing the things that reduce our stress, that support our health, that aren't necessarily about being perfect and being on a diet. Because those are the things that are really going to help us maintain long-term health, is recognizing that we deserve that care regardless, independent of how we eat. And it's kind of the idea, I want to look into the origin of this, but the idea of throwing the baby out with the bathwater, right? So, just are we doing all or nothing? So what has happened for me personally is that I learned that my self-care had to be non-negotiable, and that it couldn't be tied to my eating, and it couldn't also be tied to how much time I had. I had to be able to do it all the time, no matter what. And then eventually, because it used to be, self-care was the first thing I threw out the window because I didn't have time, right? Or energy. But then I had less energy. So I had to learn to make myself a priority no matter what and do this like basic level of self-care. And now what has happened for me is that I've learned if my stress level goes up, I actually need even more self-care. And sometimes I need to be gentle with myself about what I'm eating. If you're moving or something, like how many times, have you moved in your life where you planned as best you could, but like things just went wrong. It took longer than you thought. You were exhausted. You end up getting, something quick and easy, right? So that doesn't mean that you shouldn't also be gentle with yourself. You shouldn't be loving towards yourself. You shouldn't, if you're like on antidepressants or something, like quit taking your medication. We wouldn't ever recommend that to someone, right? So anyway, I don't know if I'm making a lot of sense today, but I was just really thinking about how important it is to take care of ourselves and to establish habits that we do no matter what, regardless of whether we're on a diet or not. So I hope that this is something that makes you think about some habits that maybe you don't incorporate into your life just when you're not on a diet and things that you can start to build the foundation of your forever self-care and eating well plan, right? Something that's sustainable long-term that you're not on or off of. You just do every day to take care of yourself. All right. I hope you have a good day. Thanks so much.